Story 1. Hey everyone, let me tell you about something that still gives me chills when I think about it. My name's Michael Thompson, and this happened a few years ago when my wife Emily and I moved our family to a quiet suburb in Asheville, North Carolina. We'd been crammed in a tiny apartment in downtown Charlotte, and with our third kid Ethan joining the chaos, we needed space. Toys everywhere, baby stuff piling up. It was time for a change. We found this house in a neighborhood so peaceful the neighbors said you could leave your doors unlocked. It wasn't a mansion or anything, but compared to our old place, it felt like a palace. The backyard was what sold Emily. It had this overgrown garden, kind of wild, with these old stone statues scattered around. They were weathered, a bit creepy, like something you'd see in a fantasy movie. One was an angel. Another looked like a robed figure. Honestly, they were odd, but Emily loved them. She said they gave the yard character. I didn't care much either way. Less yard work for me, so I was fine leaving them as is. Ethan, our little prankster, was thrilled to have a big yard to run around in. Everything felt perfect at first, like we were finally settling into our dream home. But a few days after moving in, I noticed something weird. I was sipping coffee, looking out the kitchen window at the garden, when I saw that one of the statues, the angel I think, was facing away from the house. All the others were pointed toward us, so it stood out. I squinted, trying to remember if it had always been like that. I could have sworn they all faced the same way, but I wasn't sure. Moving's stressful, right? You misremember things. I brushed it off and went about my day. The next morning, though, I checked again, and my stomach did a little flip. Another statue, the robed one, was turned around too, facing the woods behind our property. Now, I'm not a paranoid guy, but this felt off. I asked Emily if she'd noticed anything, and she just shrugged, saying she hadn't paid attention. I thought maybe Ethan was messing with me. He's always pulling stunts, like hiding my keys. But when I asked him, he gave me this blank look like I was crazy. He's a kid, sure, but dragging heavy statues around? No way. I stood there in the garden, staring at those things, feeling this weird itch in the back of my mind. It wasn't just the statues. It was the quiet of the place. In the city, there's always noise, cars, people, life. Here, it was so still, like the world was holding its breath. I told myself I was overthinking it. We had bigger problems. Money was tight, and I was constantly worried about my job. Still, every time I passed that window, I'd glance out, half expecting to see those statues somewhere else. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, waiting. It's hard to explain, but it was like the house itself was keeping a secret. I didn't want to scare Emily or the kids, so I kept it to myself, hoping it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right, and that was just the beginning. So things started getting weirder in our Asheville home, and I'm still shaken up talking about it. I'm Michael Thompson, and after noticing those statues in our backyard turning the wrong way, I tried to stay calm for Emily and the kids. But a few days later, I glanced out the kitchen window at dusk, and my heart just stopped. All the statues, every single one, were lined up in a perfect row, right at the edge of the house, like they were staring inside. It was eerie, like something straight out of a nightmare. I stood there, my breath shallow, feeling this heavy weight, like those stone eyes were locked on me. I went outside to check, heart pounding, scanning the yard for anyone hiding. It was still light out, but I was paranoid. Up close, I tried lifting one of the statues, and no way. It was way too heavy for one person to move, let alone all of them. Emily came out, and her face went pale. She suggested maybe the neighbors were pranking us, but that didn't add up. We'd met everyone nearby. They were normal, friendly folks. Who'd do this to a family with young kids? We called the police, but they weren't much help. They said to get security cameras, but with money so tight, that wasn't happening. I told them we'd think about it, but inside I was freaking out. We hid it from the kids. Didn't want them scared. But Emily was rattled, and so was I. A couple of days passed, quietly, and I started hoping it was over. Then one weekend, I took the kids out to play in the yard after breakfast. That's when I saw it. Big black spray-painted letters on the back wall of our house screaming, "Go away!" I nearly dropped Ethan. I hustled the kids inside, told Emily to stay with them, and ran through the garden, yelling like a madman, ready to fight whoever did this. But no one was there. My anger turned to cold fear. This wasn't a prank anymore. Someone wanted us gone. The police came again, took a report, but without evidence. They just promised to have a patrol nearby. Emily was a wreck, and I was barely holding it together, promising her we'd be okay. That night, I was in the kitchen when Emily screamed from the living room. I raced in, and she was pointing out the window, trembling. I looked, and my stomach dropped. 5 figures stood in our backyard, each wearing white masks, moving in this jerky, unnatural dance, like puppets on strings. It was the most disturbing thing I'd ever seen. We froze, too shocked to move. That feeling of being watched crawling over me. I snapped out of it, grabbed the biggest kitchen knife we had, and screamed at Emily to call the police. I ran outside, yelling like a lunatic, but took one step toward them and froze. 5 against 1. They could have been armed. I bolted back inside, locking the door, telling Emily to hide upstairs with the kids. By some miracle, the knife must have spooked them because they scattered into the woods. The police found nothing, but that was it for me. I scraped together what little we had and bought cameras the next day. Emily begged to move, but I said we'd wait one more incident, and we'd go, even if it bankrupted us. The cameras worked, nothing else happened, but we still live here, and we never got answers. That feeling of being watched, of being helpless in our own home.it, never really goes away. Story 2. Hey everyone, I've got a story that still makes my skin crawl, and I need to get it off my chest. I'm David Carter, and this happened a few months ago when my wife Sarah and I moved to a big old house out in the middle of nowhere in Bozeman, Montana. We'd been living in Billings, but Sarah wanted some distance from her family, and I was ready for a quieter life. I'm an electrician, so picking up work anywhere isn't a big deal for me. We found this place online, a steal for how huge it was. Way more space than 2 people, and our black lab, Max, would ever need. We figured we'd use the extra rooms to host friends, or maybe turn it into something special down the line. The house was surrounded by open fields, with mountains in the distance, and it felt like we'd finally found our slice of peace. Sarah was thrilled, and Max was in heaven chasing rabbits in the yard. For the first couple of months, everything was great, like we were living in a postcard. But then, I started noticing something off. The lights upstairs kept flickering and tripping the circuit breaker, but the rest of the house stayed fine. It happened once, then twice, and being an electrician, I knew it was probably just a load imbalance. Easy fix. I hadn't spent much time in the basement since we moved in. We'd glanced at it when the realtor showed us the place, but it was cluttered with junk, and I didn't think much of it. One afternoon, I grabbed my toolbox and headed down there to check the main breaker. The basement was a mess. Old furniture, dusty boxes, more like a storage unit than a usable space. I found the breaker panel tucked behind some shelves, and after poking around, I figured out the issue. I told myself I'd rewire it later when I had more time. As I was about to head upstairs, curiosity got the better of me. I mean, this was our house, and I barely knew this part of it. So, I started looking around, pushing past stacks of chairs and crates. That's when I saw it. A massive metal door in the far corner, half hidden in the shadows. It wasn't just any door.it. Looked like something you'd see in a bank vault or a panic room, tall and thick, with a heavy-duty lock. My first thought was maybe it was a storm shelter. Montana gets some wild weather. But why didn't the realtor mention it? I tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I went upstairs, dug through the drawer of keys the previous owners left, and tried every single one. Nothing worked. I told Sarah about it, and she was just as curious. But when we called the old owners, things got weird. They were cagey, pausing like they were choosing their words carefully. The wife finally said it was just a storm room, but they'd lost the key and told us to ignore it. That didn't sit right with me. Who loses the key to something like that? Their tone made my gut twist, like they were hiding something. Sarah laughed it off, saying I was being dramatic, but I couldn't let it go. That door was down there, locked, and I had no idea what was behind it. It felt like the house was keeping a secret, and every time I walked by the basement stairs, I'd feel this nagging sense that something wasn't right, like we weren't as alone as we thought. Alright guys, I'm David Carter, and things in our Bozeman, Montana house got way creepier after I found that locked metal door in the basement. That nagging feeling that something was off just wouldn't quit, and it only got worse. I kept thinking about what the previous owners said, or didn't say, about that door. Their weird pauses on the phone, telling us to ignore it, felt like a red flag. Sarah thought I was obsessing, but I couldn't shake the idea that the house was hiding something. I'd find myself staring at the basement stairs, wondering what was behind that door. After a couple of weeks, I caved and called a locksmith, against Sarah's teasing that I was turning into a conspiracy theorist. The guy showed up, took one look at the door, and said the lock was way too complex for a simple storm shelter. That made my stomach churn. It took him almost an hour, but he finally cracked it. When that door swung open, I wasn't ready for what I saw. Inside was this small, dim room that felt wrong, like a shrine or something. Old black and white photos were pinned to the walls, covered in strange symbols I couldn't make sense of. In the middle was a single chair facing a blank wall, like someone had sat there for hours, just staring. A cot in the corner had crumpled blankets, and the air smelled stale, musty. Then, I saw the trash. Empty chip bags, crushed water bottles. My heart sank. Someone had been living here, and not long ago. I stood there, frozen, trying to process it. The locksmith looked as freaked. Number was disconnected. The police came, took a report, and said they'd try to track them down, but they didn't seem hopeful. That night, Sarah and I were on edge, jumping at every creak. Around midnight, we heard a loud bang on the front door. Max, our lab, went nuts, barking like crazy. Then it came again. Boom, boom, boom. Sarah grabbed Max, her eyes wide with panic. I crept to the window, but it was too dark to see anything. The banging stopped, but then we heard rocks tapping against our bedroom window. I grabbed a baseball bat, ready to confront whoever was out there, but Sarah begged me to call the police. Before I could, we heard glass shatter downstairs. I sprinted to the kitchen and saw the window smashed, 2 figures darting into the fields. The police showed up, searched the property, but found nothing. They guessed whoever was living in that room was mad we'd locked them out and came back to scare us. I barricaded the cellar door with every heavy thing I could find and chained it shut. It's been quiet since, but Sarah's a wreck, and I'm not much better. We're still in this house, waiting for answers that might never come, feeling like we're being watched, helpless in our own home, wondering if they'll come back. Story 3. Hey everyone, I've got a story that still messes with my head, and I need to share it. I'm Ryan Mitchell, and this happened when I was 27, right after I bought my first house in Boise, Idaho. I'd been living with my parents, 3 siblings, and 2 dogs my whole life, so moving out was a big deal. The house was small, nothing fancy, but I'd saved up for years, and I was proud of it. The thing is, going from a loud, chaotic home to total silence was a shock. No barking, no arguing over the television, just quiet. At first I wasn't sure I'd ever get used to it. I'd lie awake at night, hearing every creak, feeling like the house was too empty. One thing I loved though was this tiny balcony off the 2nd floor bedroom. It was barely big enough to stand on, no room for a chair, but I'd go out there most nights after work to unwind and smoke. I hated the smell in the house, so the balcony was perfect. My street was pretty standard. Houses lined up close together, and behind my place was another row of homes separated by tall wooden fences. From the balcony, I could see over the fence into my backyard neighbor's yard. It was a mess. Overgrown grass, weeds everywhere, like no one cared. I'd met most of the neighbors, but never the person living there. I never saw anyone. No lights at night, nothing. It was like the place was abandoned. I figured maybe an old person lived there, someone who didn't get out much. After a few weeks, I got curious and decided to introduce myself. One Saturday, I walked around the block to their house. It looked rough. Paint peeling, siding scratched up, the yard a jungle. The doorbell was busted, so I knocked a few times and waited. No answer. I was about to leave when I caught a flicker behind the window shade, like someone was peeking out. It gave me the creeps, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Then, out of nowhere, the door flew open, slamming against the wall. I jumped back, heart racing, and there was this elderly woman standing there staring at me. Her name was Evelyn Chen, I found out later. She was short, with gray hair and a tight bun. Her face wrinkled but tense, like she was clenching every muscle. Her eyes were wide, unnervingly wide, and she just stared, not saying a word. I tried to play it cool, cleared my throat, and introduced myself as her new neighbor. After a long pause, she mumbled her name, gave a half smile, and that was it. She didn't ask my name or say anything else, just kept watching me. I nodded, turned away, and walked off, feeling her eyes on my back. I didn't hear the door close, but I wasn't about to look back. That night, I went out to the balcony like usual, trying to shake off how weird that encounter felt. Then I glanced down, and my stomach dropped. There she was, Evelyn, standing dead center in her yard, staring up at my house. She didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there, her eyes locked on me. I froze, not sure if I was imagining it. It was like she knew I was there, watching me in the dark. I went inside, heart pounding, telling myself she was just a lonely old lady, maybe a bit off. But deep down I felt exposed, like I was being studied, alone in this quiet house with nowhere to hide. Hey everyone, it's Ryan Mitchell again. And things in my Boise, Idaho house got way worse after that creepy encounter with my neighbor, Evelyn Chen. That night I saw her staring up at my balcony. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next evening, I went out to smoke again, and there she was, moving from window to window in her house, her eyes following me. I pretended not to notice, but my skin was crawling. It was like she wanted me to know she was watching. I told myself she was just a confused old lady, maybe lonely, like my dad suggested when I called him. He said she might have dementia and to feel sorry for her. Easier said than done when someone's staring into your soul every night. A few days went by without anything weird, and I started to relax, thinking maybe she'd stopped. Then one morning, I found a single woman's sock lying in my backyard, right by the fence. My stomach twisted. That meant she'd been on my property, maybe while I was asleep. I stood there, staring at it, feeling so exposed in my own home. I didn't want to confront her. She creeped me out too much, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. I should have called the police, but I didn't want to stir up trouble with a neighbor. Looking back, that was a mistake. That night, I was in bed half asleep when the doorbell started ringing. Not once or twice, but over and over, like someone was leaning on it. My heart jumped to my throat. I knew it was her. I was more annoyed than scared at first, thinking I'd just tell her to leave me alone. I threw on a shirt, muttering to myself, and headed downstairs. I still cringe at how naive I was, acting like it was no big deal. When I opened the door, Evelyn lunged at me, full speed, a kitchen knife gleaming in her hand. Her face was twisted, eyes wild, screaming that I'd taken her son. I barely had time to think. I grabbed her arm, wrestling the knife away, and pinned her to the floor. She was small, easy to overpower, but it was terrifying. My hands were shaking, my heart racing, as she kept screaming, saying she'd kill me. She even tried to bite me, thrashing like a trapped animal. I held her down, yelling for someone to help, and called 911 with my free hand. Those 5 minutes waiting for the police felt like forever, her screams echoing in my head. When they finally arrived, they cuffed her and put her in a cruiser, still ranting about her son. I was shaking, trying to explain what happened while they checked if I was okay. They told me she'd be sent to a psychiatric facility, and I never saw her again. The police didn't find any record of a son, so I don't know what she was talking about. That night changed me. I'd never felt so helpless, so alone, knowing someone could just walk up to my door and try to hurt me. The quiet of the house, once just weird, now felt suffocating, like it was hiding threats I couldn't see. I couldn't stay there after that. Less than a year later, I sold the place and moved. Even now, I'm paranoid, always checking my locks, glancing over my shoulder. I can still picture her eyes, that unhinged stare, and it makes me wonder what else was watching me in that house, waiting for me to let my guard down.